So welcome everyone. My name is Savannah and I am the coordinator for Book Week this year. So tonight, as part of Book Week 2020, we are so lucky to have Helen Knott join us. It's really, really exciting. My co-host tonight is Emily, and Emily's also from SAS Books. So between the two of us, we'll be your guides this evening for Helen's beautiful event. So before we get started, just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge some things. So first of all, SAS Books is located on Treaty 4 territory in Regina, which sits on the homeland of the Nahiawak, Anishinaabe, Dakota, Lakota, and Nakota peoples, as well as the Métis Nation. We want to take the time to pay respects to the ancestors of this place and acknowledge the historic and ongoing care of these lands, and also to acknowledge that acknowledgement itself is just one step in a larger process of writing relations. So just making sure that we reflect on that as well. We also want to thank our funders, the Department of Canadian Heritage, the Canada Book Fund, and the Canada Council for the Arts. Without their support, Book Week would not be possible. So we're really fortunate to be able to do this today. So I'm really excited to introduce Helen Knott. So we're really lucky to have Helen here tonight with us. Helen is of Dene Za and Nihio and European descent from Prophet River First Nation, living in northeastern BC. Helen is a master's and First Nations studies student at UNBC and currently holds a bachelor's degree in social work. She has various pieces published in places such as the Malahat Review, Chatelaine, and the New Quarterly. Her first book, In My Own Moccasins, a memoir of resilience, was released in the fall of 2019 through the University of Regina Press. The book has been a national bestseller and was shortlisted for a BC Yukon Book Prize. So we're pretty lucky to be featuring this book tonight. And please join me in welcoming Helen Knott. Yay! And I'm going to meet myself.
Thank you for that introduction, Savannah. I'm super excited to be here and to hold space with people online, and grateful to SAS Books for putting these the event series on. So I am in Fort St. John. I was just reading the one comment from Julie Scott, and she's from Syilx and Secwepemc territory, which was like a second home for me as well. I actually did my bachelor's down there, so a little bit of everywhere. So for tonight, I'm going to read from my book, and then I'm going to read from a newer piece because I'm working on my second book. So y'all will be the first to hear from that one. Okay. You can feel a mother's lament in her voice. The tone of her words penetrates the skin and hits bone. It hits something deeper than bone. It hits spirit. The chest feels as if someone is pushing on it with brute force, and that breath, that one breath, is a struggle to get in and get out. Remorse shapes the sounds leaving her mouth, and they become a rough-edged, grief-filled symphony, a mixture of wailing and words that cannot be unheard. You wince. You attempt to display no signs of your internal reactions to the shame that gets caught in her throat. But every hesitation in her story proves that silence can be a tangible beast as it forcibly pulls. Sorry, my son has decided to grab a snack. Okay. He's big now. I don't know if you read the book, but yeah, he's a big boy. But every hesitation in his story proves that silence can be a tangible beast as it forcibly pulls your head to a lowered position. You feel every struggled sentence as she speaks. Or maybe you have to be a mother to feel it. Or maybe you have to be a mother who once neglected her own to feel it. They almost lost me that time. I almost lost myself. I shivered as my sweat seeped through my clothing. I damned the light that intruded into the darkness of the room. The pillowcase that hung in the window frame was pinned sideways, and the afternoon light came in across the room slanted, the same way that my world felt. Dust particles danced in the broken light. Laughter erupted from somewhere downstairs. The smell of stale cigarette smoke enveloped me. I clenched my eyes tightly, shifted, and moaned. My detoxing body had me contracting into a tight ball 1 minute and expanding like a starfish the next. The floor was covered in clothes, some mine, some his. The mattress was on the floor, my heaped up body on the mattress. My body pulled into itself. And I wondered what it would be like to go through withdrawal somewhere pretty, somewhere clean, somewhere where the outsides didn't match my insides. I was dying a slow, self-inflicted death. If I could get my hands on another bottle and a couple lines of Coke, I'd feel enough, or rather not feel enough, to get out of the bed and catch a bus somewhere. I would go south to Revelstoke, where an old friend lived, or to the east, where I knew some people. Saskatoon, Winnipeg, Toronto, somewhere. I spent the days before trying to locate men who had known me when I was human, when I was sober. Men who had fallen for me when I was feminine and tender-hearted. Would they even recognize the woman I had become? I thought I could compel them to take care of me by appealing to their better nature or their long-standing urges to sleep with me. I would slip into arms that I knew could never hold me at my best. At the rate I was going, I knew I couldn't possibly take care of myself. I was terrified. I'm going to stop this one here and switch. It's interesting. Like, I'm 8 years sober now. And I was thinking last night, like, do I remember what withdrawals feel like? Because they were so like burned into my body and being like going through that brutal process of like coming off of something. And I had to really think on it, like to not remember like, the sweating and the shaking and what that felt like in my body. And I was like, wow, that's kind of crazy, to get to this point where there's so much distance between me and that person, and being like, maybe I don't remember, my body isn't able to pull it up on recall anymore, which is huge. So I'm writing a book right now called Becoming a Matriarch. And it's kind of goes over what that transition looks like for me, because in this last year, I've lost both my grandma and my mom. And this one is a chapter that I'm working on called We Belong to the North. I'm just going to start. Sila Sagets. My hands are cold. Sue took my hands into hers for confirmation. They are, she said, and she began to rub them in between her own. Sue told me a story of an elder from our community that she used to sit with when she was a little girl. When she got old, her veins got real big, and she would just let mosquitoes suck her blood, she'd say. I have too much anyways. I might as well share. Sue laughed at the punchline, and I giggled, even though she has told this story to me dozens of times. Her brown, wrinkled hands have veins on the top of them that look like the reversed underbellies of rivers and back channels. They protrude, making a three-dimensional map on her skin. I run my fingers over the gentle ridges of wrinkles, over the upside-down rivers of blood, over the sharp mountain peaks of knuckle. I trace my fingers over the landscape again and again and again. I'm attempting to memorize the geography of her hands. I am a cartographer. I make maps of women, of land, of dreams, and I keep the records in my bones. In her book, Two Trees Make a Forest, Jessica J. Lee writes that the story of a place, lithic, living, and forgotten, can be found in maps and what they include or leave out. The stories of this place live inside the bodies of the people that come from it. We are all living maps. I am a sliver of memory, a crescent moon, a blazing sun half surrendered to the horizon, a living fragment of my grandmother's recollection. Stories, they thicken the blood of the women in my family, and I think that this is what must make them so stubborn, so slow to move away from what they love the most, so tied to the places and the people that choose to love them back. When I drove up to the Liard Hot Springs with her in the summer of 2018, she was 77 years old. It was a long drive that Papa tried to take her on when he was sick with cancer. The trip was to be their final goodbye to the north, but they had only made it halfway there when his sickness caught up to him along the Alaska Highway. Papa's blue eyes matched the color of the mountain waters he would never see again. They were the kind of blue that made you believe in God and other wholesome things. And the same body that housed eyes so blue was his struggled breath. And the same body that made you believe in God was a death rattle. The kind of rattle that made you realize mortality had always lived hidden inside of the bodies of the people that you loved. Reminded you that mortality wasn't an anonymous figure, but it had a name that your tongue had memorized and learned to call out for. As Sue and Papa returned home, he never made it north. His name still lives on my tongue, and when I am feeling brave, I whisper it, knowing that his spirit smiles. In this small way, Daryl Street is immortal. I was finishing what Papa had started. I imagined my hands were his hands as they guided the wheel through long, straight stretches and around continuous curves. I could see Papa's eyes twinkle as we rolled up to each new summit. I drank in the vistas. I swallowed the endless green sea of spruce, pine, poplar, and birch. My eyes took in the sharper, bold mountains of rock that braved the elements naked and without the company of trees. I swallowed it all, and I let the land make a home inside of me. Perhaps I've been swallowed by the land, and it has allowed me to make a home inside of it. Which leads me to the age-old question of what came first, the indigenous girl or her territory. The entire way, as Sue told me stories that were tied to the bold mountains and blue waters that we traveled through. She talked to me about her dad, Charlie, and her grandpa, Chief Makanacha, who walked through these mountains and bathed in these rivers. There was a small cabin off to the side of the Toad River store that Grandpa Charlie built sometime between 1930 and 1950. I made this window of time up with generous room for error because I am unsure of exactly when he built it. I can only measure time from a Sue story that come from other people's stories that tell of times that predate her life. And so she sometimes uses the indicators long ago and not so long ago. The cabin still stands sturdy and fully intact. I place my hand on the cabin as if to pull my grandfather into the present moment with us, to touch something that he built with his hands, with my own, to be in places where we as a people have long since existed. We are connected through decades through place memory. A Hudson's Bay trading post was established in Toad River in 1867, the same year that Canada's White Fathers of Confederation created a new country composed entirely of Indigenous lands, unbeknownst to the vast majority of the original inhabitants. The Toad River Post was discovered to be abandoned 20 years later. I'm unsure when a post or settler community was reestablished there, but today the Toad River Lodge boasts a collection of thousands of hats given to them by people traveling the Alaska Highway. And the cabin my grandpa built sits off to the left, serving as a marker of how far north our reach was. Land has always been the catalyst for Sue's stories. Land is memory. It is spirit. Land denies our colonial categorizations of time because it is the longest living record keeper. We have pitiful memories as humans. I'm connected to my ancestors through territory, and my future grandchildren will know me through the land. The land will hold memory even when we fail to do so. If I do not know the land, and the land does not know me, have I even existed? Where does my memory go if I am only recognized by concrete and wooden boxes? If no water, mountains, or medicines know my name, did I ever have a name at all? I whisper introductions of my bloodline into the air. A Cree friend of mine recently took a road trip to northern Saskatchewan, and she kept repeating about how it felt like she was returning home, but she had never been there before, having been raised in British Columbia. Each time she mentioned it, feeling like home, she said it without surety, without claiming it as home, as if to dismiss the feeling that had moved her so strongly as something that was foolish. You know, even when you have never been there, maybe your ancestors have. Even when we don't remember or can't remember, the land remembers for us. It's in your blood and in your bones, I said in encouragement. This feeling she had is what I had experienced with Grandma as she rattled off memories in the passenger seat. I'm surprised, but not surprised, that I've never heard most of the stories that Sue told on the trip. The last time I went through the mountains past Fort Nelson with the Sue and Papa, I was a child. It was a trip to the Liard Hot Springs in a blue van with a teardrop window that had a bed in the back. The trip was a family childhood rite of passage. We all took our turns going north. I learned how to pop a squat during that trip. I was on the side of the Alaska Highway, worried about traffic and trying to follow my cousin's lead on squatting. I thought I had it, but I didn't lean far enough back and instead peed directly on my shorts. I shrieked as my cousin howled beside me, her pee streaming down and away from her. To this day, my cousin likes to remind me of that one time I was an amateur town-raised Indian that pissed all over herself on the side of the highway. And then dutifully remind her that she fell off a log at the hot springs and got prickles from a rose bush stuck in her ass. She cried because she had a case of the prickle bum. There's a picture of us, her and I, sitting on a log situated off the main path that leads to the hot springs. Our small bodies are turned inwards towards each other, and we appear to be deep in conversation. Sunlight is shining and bouncing off of our brown hair from above like a halo. Bigfoot girls in our natural environment. Cousin would remind me that I inherited my dad's last name. I am a Knott. I want so badly to be a Bigfoot woman by name as I am by blood. The flora and fauna that thrives in the unique climate of the hot springs surrounds us, and we look like indigenous angels in this photograph. I can't recall what we were talking about, but she tells me that I was comforting her. And I don't remember this, but I remember the endless miles of pavement that we drove to our destination. I remember learning how to make fires with a Sioux and her showing me how little pebbles can help clean a pot when they're placed inside of it. Remember the swishing, rattling noise the pebbles made as she shook the pot in circles. I remember my cousin and I constructing makeshift fishing rods from sticks and strings with pop can tabs tied to the end and casting our lines into the Mancho Lake. I remember running away from the water because we thought there was a monster in it, the Mancho Lake monster. I remember reading Archie comics as we laid in the bed at the back of the van, trying to decide which of us was Betty and who was Veronica. I'm pretty sure that I was Betty and she was Veronica. She's kind of spoiled. I remember the sunlight and the wind pouring in from all directions. I remember how impossibly new and large the world felt back then. I'm trying to get back to Zoom. So that was it. And I'm going to cut it off there because it can go for a while.
Thank you so much, Helen. That was beautiful and amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your new work with us, and also from your memoir as well. That was incredible. Thank you.